Hello everybody and welcome back to the Texas Reloading Room. My name is Justin and today I want to do another takedown video for you. This is not going to be on a modern style firearm. This is actually going to be on a World War II gun, and it's been very briefly featured in my videos before. If you've seen some of my older stuff, you've probably seen this in my intro video that I was using for a while. This is my Japanese Type 99 Arisaka from the middle of the war, I believe, based on the serial number. This was manufactured in 1945 by Toyo Kogyo, and it's been sitting in the gun safe for too long. I wanted to take it out and strip it down and clean everything to make sure that everything in the internals is in good shape. This gun fires great, and I want to make sure that I take care of it. And I'm going to bring you guys along for the ride so you know the ins and outs of how this thing works. We're going to take this down to its individual pieces. Let's move over to the bench and see what we're working with. Alright guys, first I want to mention I am using basically a completely different recording setup. I've got a new camera, new microphone, so basically audio, video, new stuff. I've got lighting setups on either side, so this display for you is going to be much brighter and much more vivid than any of my previous videos. I will do a video on what I am recording with after this, so stay tuned for that. But today let's go ahead and get into this. Number one, we need to make sure that the firearm is clear. In order to do that, we'll take the safety off. So if this is rotated in, kind of hard, you need a pretty stiff palm, but it'll be rotated. If you can't move the bolt, then this needs to come in and over to the left. Once that safety is disengaged, we'll open the bolt and then we'll release it here, and that will just pull it right out. Okay. Now obviously we are clear, so let's go ahead real quick and talk about the bolt disassembly on this. Back here is the safety. It's a very, I guess you could say Mauser-esque style bolt, apart from the safety of course, but it's also a very simple bolt. So what we're going to do is push this in and rotate it to the right as far as it'll go, and it'll come right out. There's your safety mechanism, your firing pin, and your spring. You can set those aside, and if you want to take off the extractor, you can. Usually what you can do, rotate it around. You see this spot right here where there's no locking lugs. Rotate it around to right there if it's not wanting to be a little catchy thing here. Alright, so we got it right there, and you can just push it off. And you can go ahead and leave this on there. That's not doing anything. So that is the disassembly of the bolt mechanism on one of these. I'm going to set those pieces to the side. These pieces do get cleaned regularly for me, so I don't need to worry about that. What I'm concerned about is the stock and like the underside of the action and such like that. I'm going to start by removing the peripherals, which is going to be the butt plate here and our loop right here. So always use hollow ground bits, especially on these older ones. Whoever owned this before me messed up a couple of the screws on it, and I had to be very delicate when I was taking them out. For this, I'm going to use my largest flathead. And if you see this thing starting to split when you take these out, stop what you're doing and go consult somebody if you need to repair the wood. These stocks that the Japanese were using are actually two-piece with a dovetail that holds them together. And once we take the butt plate off, you should be able to see that a little bit better. See, like this, these metal pieces could use a little bit of a cleaning up, so I may go over those with a brass brush of some sort. And we're going to take this off. There's a screw in the back and there's a screw on the top. The screw that goes in the back is going to be the long one. And the screw in the top should be a shorter screw. Or I may have that backwards. Nope, got it right. Okay. So short screw in the top, long screw in the back. And this could definitely use some cleaning up because you see all that rust that's in there. And I may go ahead and touch up the wood, give it a tiny bit of oil. Alright, so now that that stuff's off, it's really kind of up to you where you want to go next. What I did was actually remove the magazine follower. And you'll pull this clip back and the floor plate will come out. You can slide your spring off. Just like that. And it'll come out. You can separate these if you want to clean them down further, but you don't have to. Okay. And that'll stay on there for the moment. Go ahead and lock that back into place. And then we can start taking the wood off. Now we'll go ahead and forewarn you, the barrel bands, at least on this particular one, cannot be completely removed. They will get caught up on the front sight. If you want to take the barrel bands completely off, you have to remove the front sight, and it's way too much of a hassle on these older guns. So, just a forewarning, it's not a big deal. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen up my screws here. And what I did the first time I took this apart is I actually arranged these screws in a particular order on my bench so I knew exactly what position on the rifle they went in. And these screws go straight through the wood, so be careful when you're pulling them out. If you're having trouble getting a screw out, don't try to force it. Sometimes what I did was, you can put a little bit of heat on them if it's not too close to the wood. If you're concerned about damaging the wood, you can soak some Croil into it. On some of these, especially the ones that hold the action together, they actually peened a little bit of the metal frame into the screw head. So watch out for that as well. Alright. So, now this is a two-piece front barrel band, and you'll see that here in just a second. There's this, and then there's another piece inside of here. Come on. There we go. Alright. So there's piece one and piece two. And when you get it put back together, it goes just like this. And it slips onto here. So maybe it's just like an added protection so that you're not clamping too much on the slender part of the wood. Okay. Before we take that back band off, let's go ahead and take our screws out here. We've got 1, 2, 3 to take out. I think this one for me was the most difficult one. What I ended up having to do was peen a little bit of that metal back out and then tap up here, because over the last 80 years or so, this almost ended up becoming one piece. It kind of corroded together, so it needed a little bit of a tap to get that separated again. But now it's no problem once I freed it up. These 3 screws actually go through sleeves that are set or inlet into the stock itself. I'll show you those when we get the wood off. Give me just a moment. Got one more screw here to take out. Okay. Alright. ahead and slide our barrel band off. We can lift up on the front of the upper handguard and then pull it forward because it is nestled in underneath the sight. All right. And this was actually preserved quite well. What I may do is clean it up a little bit and put a little bit of preservative back on that. So set that off to the side. All right, let's see if we can't get our action out of here. Yeah. All right, there we go. All right, set the action off to the side. We'll come back for that in just a minute. Take the tang out. Set that over there next to that. And this you can just gently work out. If it doesn't want to come readily, don't force it. In some cases, the magazine box itself may come apart. It's not really secured on anything in there. Alright, and now you can see those metal inserts that I was talking about that are designed to protect the wood and possibly even prevent over tightening of the screws as well, because it is very easy to crack these wood stocks if you're over tightening the screws. But the inside of this stock is incredibly greasy, especially over here in the barrel channel. So we're going to clean that up. But before we do that, let's go over to the action and start working on that. Alright, so the next thing we're going to focus on is the action. And here on the underside there is a bit of corrosion that I need to clean up. It does get a little bit annoying sometimes with the barrel bands rattling around, but really there's not much that we can do about that. So what I'm looking at here is our trigger assembly. And I'll probably drift those pins out just so I can get these individual pieces. For that, I'm going to clamp this in my vise. I just put fresh jaw pads on this vise yesterday actually, so alright, so here we are. I've got it clamped down in the vise nice and tight. It shouldn't be moving. What I'm going to do is drift the trigger mechanism, and for that, just looking for an appropriately sized punch here. This one should be okay. Yeah, that's just about perfect. There we go. And I got my hand over there to make sure the pin doesn't fall out. Okay. Lift that off nice and easy. Make sure that you don't lose your spring there. It's a devastating thought. If you lose your spring, and if you want to disassemble the trigger from the sear mechanism, you can. I may just clean those up as one piece. So, let's turn this back over and work on getting our sight off right here. Now this is not an original rifle, or well, it is an original rifle. Some of the parts are missing, so I don't have the anti-aircraft wings on the sights here. This rifle does not have the shroud for the bolt, and it actually was not set up to take the monopod that so many of them were. From what I understand, the monopod was an inconvenience for the soldiers rather than a feature, so they just decided to remove that and toss them. So, alright, so next thing I want to look at, I want to see if we can't get the bolt release mechanism to come off, just so we can look at the internals of that and clean it if necessary. And once again, we will require a different bit for this. That one is, no, that one actually feels about right. You don't want one that won't fit comfortably into the slot. There's a lot of junk coming out of this, so there's some corrosion in there for sure. It's a very stubborn screw, but it's coming out. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to take a brief glance here at the magazine body. It is kind of dirty. Go ahead and release the floor plate here and pull our magazine body out. So when you're putting this together, hopefully you guys can see, it's not symmetrical all the way around. You want this to go together just like this. So this longer end will be up towards the bolt. And this is probably one of the dirtiest parts of this firearm, is this right here. So I'm actually going to drift this pin out and clean this entire thing. So let me see if I've got my old Wheeler screwdriver kit. It serves as a bench block from time to time. Hopefully this won't take too much of a force to get out here. Oh no, it just pushed right out. Okay. There we go. Take our floor plate off. Floor plate's not bad, but this piece of frame is, oh, it's God, it's bad. So I'm also going to take off the floor plate release. If this screw won't give me trouble like the last one did, I need a smaller bit. I think part of the problem was the bit that I was using for that other screw on the site was just too small, and the bit was turning. Some of these bits just aren't very strong. But I have found that's universal. It doesn't matter if you spend $10 on a bit set or $400 on a bit set. You're going to have basically the same quality. You just might have a slightly different warranty. But the Herter's bits do well enough for me. I haven't broken one yet. Of course, I know the limits. Okay. Don't lose your spring. So we got that. We'll set that aside. Now, just looking at this thing, evaluating the best way to clean these. Because it is pretty dirty, but I think it shouldn't take much. I'm not going to use anything caustic on it. Alright, now I got everything kind of scrubbed down and put some barricade on most of the metal here, so hopefully we have mitigated any of the rust problems that we're going to have. But I'm going to start this reassembly process by reattaching the bolt release mechanism for the takedown. And so what you'll need this piece, your actual clip here, and your thing. This is going to feed in there just like that, with this hook portion up and away. Okay. And then you will want to have your pointed screw for this on standby. And it really helps if you have a clamp for this sort of thing, so that you can compress the spring. But if you don't, it's not a big deal. You just got to be able to get that screw in there. So that was actually really easy. Just test it to make sure that your spring function is correct. Okay, that looks good. So if you want to test this further to make sure that it works, you can take your bolt actually and see if that'll lock up. See, it's working just fine. Alright, so we're good there. Now let's go ahead and focus on the trigger mechanism. which I've got right here. Remember, I never took this completely apart. So basically all I have to do is put that spring back in where it belongs, set that on, and then take my trigger pin and get that started. And what will be helpful, let's run a punch up through it so we can align things properly. Just like that. Okay. There we go. Now we've got it started just enough. I can take my punch and just tap on the top. And it may catch there towards the end, but there we go. All right, so the next step then is going to be putting the magazine body and all that back together, and then getting that installed in the rifle. So let's move back down to the bench. All right, so the next thing I want to do is reinstall my floor plate and my catch. So as we noted earlier, the floor plate actually just kind of, well, that pin just kind of was loose there. I'm not worried about that right this second. Let's actually get our, let's actually get this bit back in there so we can attach it. Just trying to remember how this set in, like just like that. So go ahead and do that, and this spring just kind of sits in there. Okay. Problem with not having any spring retention is it just wants to go whichever way, so it can be a little bit tricky, but there we go. Okay. So you got to be a little careful with that spring, but once you get it in, it's no big deal. So let's go ahead and put our screw back in. All right, we'll test that, make sure that it works. Just snug it down. Yep, everything is good there. So now we'll put the floor plate back on. And remember, this pin just kind of fell out. It doesn't need to be peened or anything like that, because when this is in the gun, or when it's in the stock itself retains this pin. Getting it lined up is the tricky part here. So there we go. Use a pick for just about everything. Let me give this a couple little taps. There we go. Nice and good. Awesome. Okay, so that's ready to put back in the stock now. So what we are going to do next is actually zoom back out. Since we've got this together and we've got this together, we can grab the stock and actually start putting it back together. So let me zoom the camera out and we'll get a better picture of the whole bench here. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in on the underside here. And don't force this, guys. It's easy to damage the wood. So we'll do that. And then Alright, so now the next bit we can do is go ahead and insert our magazine body. And just remember previously when I said, you know, the large side needs to go up. So we'll go ahead and set that in there. And don't worry, it will move around until we get exactly everything put in just right. So the next step then will be putting the action back in. So let me take it out of my vise. Slide my barrel bands down to the end here. And you're going to want to hold this bottom thing because it's not quite secured yet. And we'll very gently set that in. Okay. There we go. Just had to tinker with it a little bit and get that magazine body seated into all the crevices properly. Okay, so let's grab this. Actually, lift up on the back of the action a little bit, and we need to slip this in there just like that. Come on, there we go. Now we can set that down because it needs that reinforcement underneath it. Okay. All right, now what I would recommend is putting that back tang screw in. Okay. So we're putting this screw in right here. Go ahead and change back to my, is this it? Yeah, okay. Change back to my large bit. Don't tighten this down all the way or it will lift the front. So just snug it down just enough. All right. Let me turn my vise so it's out of the way. There we go. All right. And that will at the least hold those two pieces together. The next bit we are going to do, we'll just go ahead and do all three of these. So put that next one in. So guys, on these they go large, medium, small, or long, medium, short, however you want to. And the head on this one will have a slightly different style. See, this is pretty squarish. And it can be hard to line up if you have your other screws tightened down too much. Okay, now that I've closed the gap on them all, I will start to tighten them. I did feel that action lift up just a little bit, so I'm going to make sure that it's where it should be. And yeah, it looks good. Once we get the upper handguard on and all of the barrel bands back on, it shouldn't be a problem. So next thing we can do on this then is reattach the magazine follower and spring. So I'll drop the floor plate. It will go in like this, okay? We'll put that lead in underneath the retainer so it just snaps in. There we go. We got our magazine follower and spring back in place. And now we can focus on putting the upper handguard back on. So what I'm going to do, make sure that your follower or your barrel bands are out of the way. Slip this underneath the front sight. Line these two edges up there. And then we can pull the rear barrel band up. Okay, just like that. Alright, before I put any screws on, I'm going to seat the front barrel band as well. Let me zoom the camera in a little bit better so you can see, because it is a little bit complicated. Okay, so hopefully this is a good view and my head or my appendages don't get in the way. So what I'm going to do is actually set this piece back in first. If you remember, I was telling you about it. It needs to go in right here. Just like that. Okay. Now we can slide this over top of that, compress these two bits together, and it should snap in just like that. And all the screws will go in on the other side, over here. And if you have lined these up the way I told you to in the beginning of the video, you'll have them nice and organized on your bench. So I've got this screw here, and this one here. And then your longest screw will go through this barrel band. Okay, and we'll just go ahead and snug those up. Let me adjust it so I can get a better grip on this thing. There we go. Just needed a little bit of pressure to get those started. Okay. All right. Now let's come back up and get the bolt fitted and back together, and then we'll get the accessories on the rear of the stock. Okay, so we've got the four main components of our bolt here. Actually, let me, 5, grab the safety. And first thing we're going to do is reattach our extractor. You're going to want this to be in the up position here between the locking lugs. And you can see that compression spring will go into the grooves right here. We'll just start that. And once it's started, we're going to have to lift up on this as we push it. Okay, and then that'll slide into the groove there. And this will move around just like that. Okay. Next, take your firing pin spring, insert it into the back of the firing pin. And when you are putting this back together, you will notice there are 2 different notches on here. You want this to go onto this notch. Just like that. Okay, next, what we can do, line this square bit up with this, insert that in, and turn it to the left, and your bolt is back together. Okay, now before we put the bolt back in and make sure that the operation is proper, let's go ahead and put the sling mount and the butt plate back on here. So we'll just drop that on. Take our 2 screws, these are the fat stubby ones, and start those in to the grooves that are, to the threads that are already pitched into the wood. And then we can just go ahead and secure those down. And I don't tighten these too much because I don't use the sling swivel at all. Next, take the butt plate, make sure that it's nice and set. And not all Type 99s are going to have the same butt plate. I know for a fact the last stitches did not have one that was quite this nice. I want to say it was just a plain old piece of plastic or metal that was screwed onto the back of it. These are a little bit nicer. They're kind of contoured to the shape of the buttstock. Still kick your shoulder like a devil, but it is what it is. Now remember, short screw in the top, long screw in the back. And there we go. Alright, final step is going to be reinstalling the bolt. So for reinstallation, you'll want to make sure that your bolt looks like this. Your extractor is going to be 90 degrees to the right of the bolt body. Just like that. And now it should be retained by your capture piece, and you'll push the magazine follower down and slide it in. It should take a little bit of compression to push and then rotate forward. Okay. It is clear, as you can see. I'm going to test the trigger functionality. Caught. And check the safety. Alright. Alright friends, so I hope that you enjoyed and learned something from this video about the Type 99 Arisaka. From what I understand, the Type 38s are very similar in their construction. They are a different caliber. Instead of being the 7.7, they are a 6.8 or 6.5 or something like that. But anyway, this is one of my favorite rifles ever. That may be partially due to the fact that this is also one of the first rifles that I ever got, and was the first rifle that I ever really reloaded for. I do have an in-depth video on my reloading process for this rifle. Actually, 2 videos. It's a 2-part series because I'm loading, I'm using native 30-06 brass for this. Now, the cartridge for this is shorter, but I encourage you to go watch those videos to find out for yourself exactly how I did that. As always, guys, if you have any questions or comments at all about the content that you've seen today, please let me know down in the description or in the comments box below, and I'll do my best to answer those questions in a timely manner. Life does keep me very busy, so I don't always get to look and answer as often or as soon as I would like. But I do my best to answer all the comments that I receive if they're, questions or concerns that are directed at me. And we're just going to keep on going with this type of work. I have opted for the time being. I'm not going to take down my reloading content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I try to put out a few videos every month at the very least. Now that I've got a more dedicated recording setup, I will hopefully be doing higher quality content more often. And I'm really looking forward to that. So if you guys have any ideas about what you'd like to see next, leave that down in the comments box below. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.